Let's talk for a little bit about a couple of these folks. The fact that George Bush did help with the Ethiopian Jews is not a bad thing, but he also several times threatened to cut off or reduce aid to Israel unless they followed his policy under James Baker, who has very clearly said the Jews don't vote for us, so them. I'm in polite company. You've got folks like Ray LaHood, who was until last year was the chair a chair of a subcommittee in the intelligence in the Select Committee on Intelligence. He's a Lebanese Christian who has openly opposed efforts to support Israel and has sided with Hezbollah. Darrell Issa was the same thing. The difference is, you know, when we have our Cynthia McKinney, who is now a member of the Green Party, we voted her out. What's happening with Jones from Georgia, who is going around and who is one of the few Republicans to oppose referring Ahmadinejad over to the United Nations Security Council for incitement to genocide? He's still there. LaHood is retiring this year, but he could have stayed there as long as he wanted. Darrell Issa, when Dana Rohrabacher said that he thought that Ariel Sharon and Yasser Arafat were cut from the same cloth, he is still there. He's gotten a lot better, by the way. I do want to give the RJC credit for bringing him into line. But they don't discipline their own when they get out of line. The Democrats, we do. Jesse Jackson is not what he once was in this party, and part of it is because of a position with regards to the Jewish community. And that's why in 2006, depending on which poll you read, anywhere from 78 to 80 to 90% of Jews in this country voted Democratic because they were fed up with the Republican line and the Republican inconsistencies. Now, he's going to bring up the RJC poll that says it was a lot lower. You know, I would personally rather listen to Gallup or CNN than to have a Republican tell me I did my own poll and here's what I found out, because it's going to be biased. It's like having a Democratic pollster come out and say, guess what? Everyone really agrees with the Democrats. Of course you're going to take that with a grain of salt. But the bottom line here is, according to the Pew Research Institute, 77% of Jews opposed the war in Iraq. As much as, according to CNN and all the other groups, as much as 80% of Jews vote Democrat. When it comes to protecting Israel and protecting Jews here in this country, Democrats have the more consistent and the better record. And they hold their people accountable who don't stay in line with that.
So I haven't had a chance to say much about Iraq. The Israelis seem to have had sufficient concern about Saddam Hussein and weapons of mass destruction program and potential nuclear proliferation, meaning the state gives it to terror cells, as far back as 1981, when they successfully hit the French-built Osirak reactor. They were wrongly condemned, but Vice President Cheney, among others, has repeatedly stated that the world was safer and American troops certainly were safer during Operation Desert Storm in '91. Please remember that Saddam lobbed Scuds at Israel in 1991. Iraq, of course, did finance the murder of Israelis and fund terrorism. That ended with the liberation of Iraq. Arguably, we have planted a seed of democratization in the Arab world, dealt a blow to dictatorship and its model in the Arab Muslim world, prevented and preempted a ruthless dictator from continuing to attack American interests and Israel, saved millions of Iraqi lives, shown force in a region that mostly respects only force, cowed Libya into turning in its weapons of mass destruction program, which is now in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and by the way, helped to unravel, therefore, the AQ Khan terror network, which meant that the Israelis on September 6th felt confident enough to attack, like they did in '81 in Iraq, eastern Syria, which was North Korean nuclear proliferation. By the way, an attack which revealed that Russian anti-aircraft capabilities are weak or non-existent in Syria, no matter what the cost. And it's the same system that the Iranians have, which is why you saw a panic in Iran over the last 2 months, including the firing of their Iranian proliferation negotiator Larijani. I just wanted to put on the table, there's a balance to weigh when we discuss Iraq. On balance, I'm very proud of Operation Iraqi Freedom.
To Andrew, wouldn't you agree that the Democratic candidate's opposition to the use of force against Iran makes it more likely that Iran will obtain nuclear weapons and therefore be a greater threat to the survival of Israel?
Actually, I just got an article, op-ed published in this week's Jewish Journal on this issue, in which I talk about how that progressives and most pro-Israel organizations have the same feeling with regards to military action against Iran. AIPAC opposes, they don't want military action taken off the table as an option, but they oppose military action against Iran. I saw Howard Berman come up and speak in front of our organization only a couple weeks ago and say that if we right now attack Iran, that it will evaporate whatever goodwill we have left, and we're stretched so thin in Iraq that we can't do it anyway because we missed the real threat, and the real threat was ultimately Iran. I think for those of us who have seen the presidential candidates speak over and over again, we see a very compressed version when we're on television. I saw John Edwards speak in front of the National Jewish Democratic Council, in which he went on for about 15 minutes about the need to take on Iran through sanctions and diplomatic pressure and multi-party talks like we've done in North Korea. Obama has been very clear from the very beginning that while he prefers not to take the military option off the table, he thinks that we can solve this problem through a dialogue, either direct or with other parties. Clinton's the same way. But if we keep on responding in this way of solely threatening military action, then Iran is going to continue to act like a teenager. And for those of you who have teenagers, what happens when you tell them not to do something? They do it. Well, Iran is, a lot of what we're doing in terms of the pressure is actually making the Iranian people, who actually like the United States quite a bit, they're making them run to support the Iranian government because they don't want bombs falling on them. There are better ways in which we can take on Iran, and frankly, I think that the Democrats have at least been willing to explore those, whereas for the most part, most of the Republicans have really just engaged in saber rattling. And if they were serious about that, then they would release the Iran Sanctions Enabling Act so that we can put some real teeth and let the states take on Iran as well.
So whenever I have a statement about how militaristic the Republicans are, I think it's helpful to share just a word or two about our foreign policy, which has a lot more to it than just operations of our military. U.S. foreign policy includes human intelligence gathering, and the sharing of information with our allies, and the efforts round the clock, night and day, to disrupt terrorism and terrorist financing, although the New York Times kind of hurt one of our efforts by revealing it to the world. Political and diplomatic initiatives, and what is called the Bush administration's economic foreign policy for prosperity, integration, and security. This is an effort to, for example, revolutionize development assistance. The United States has quadrupled aid to sub-Saharan Africa. We were the lead gift of $18 billion to combat AIDS in Africa. And then the president went back and doubled down. It's now $30 billion lead gift. We're trying to have $60 billion around the world to combat AIDS. Through the Millennium Challenge accounts, standards have been set. So we try to incentivize countries to work with the West, grow their economies, promote human rights for women and for children, and they get more aid if their grade goes up in how they treat their own people. Our economic engagement around the world is at an all-time high. It's opening up markets and leveling the playing field. It's a force for growth and security. This week we did the Panama deal. Still on the table are Peru and South Korea and Colombia. By the way, all of these trade agreements help California's economy very much. Historic global growth is rife in the world. It's the first time since 1960 that less than 10 million children in a year will die before they reach the age of 2. and strong domestic growth, and therefore we've been an engine for the world's economy.